Hey, what's going on, guys? Meteorologist Jonathan Kegas back with you to pinpoint the tropics. Each week, we're going to try to get together to look at the Atlantic Basin in particular and see if anything's going on out there and talk about where it could be headed and some of the big time influences that are going to influence the tropical weather over the next 7 to 10 days or beyond. Again, we are coming at you from News 6 in Orlando, Florida, and the good news is that things have quieted down considerably from our brush with the tropical system in Florida that eventually became Alex and moving away from the United States, impacting Bermuda earlier in the week. There is nothing now going on. Want to show you a couple things before we get into that, though. If you like this channel, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. You will get notifications when we come on again. We're going to do this once a week, and as needed, if there's something out in the tropics, we are going to hop on there and pinpoint it alongside you again to let you know what is coming down the pipeline. And the good news is right now that there is a whole lot of nothing going on. So this is what we like. This is what we typically would anticipate for the month of June. It's not particularly an active month. What you do see blossoming down there in the extreme southwest Caribbean, we do have a few thunderstorms going on right down north of South America, and you see those few thunderstorms. So we're going to watch that. There's really a very, very low chance for anything right there to develop. What is likely going to develop, though, is going to be on the Pacific side. You see all of this mess right over here. That is likely going to develop and then move away. But that's in the Pacific. We aren't too concerned with what is going on in the Pacific, of course. So that's something that we're going to be just kind of watching. Again, it's going to be out there, but it's not moving toward the United States. You notice, though, through the Atlantic, getting closer to Puerto Rico, the main development region, as we call it, which is really that area in between the Lesser Antilles and the Caribbean islands, and then Africa, nothing going on. Again, as you would expect for this time of the year, not a whole lot to really write home about in the tropics, and that's, again, a good thing, of course. One of the reasons for that is we do have a nice big plume of Saharan dust. It's typical for this time of the year to have these big-time dust outbreaks. I saw some video and some reports from Puerto Rico of things looking very, very dusty down in those parts of the Caribbean islands because of that dust plume that is coming off. Now, when we talk about this yearly reoccurrence of this phenomenon, if you will, there's a lot of good that comes with it. It does and enhances growth in the rainforest in South America. It also helps to suppress tropical activity this time of the year. That's what I think it's most known for. But there's also some bad sides to it, mainly red tide, if you know what that is. Just some nasty stuff developing typically in the Gulf. There's going to be a whole article, a whole link to a story on clickorlando.com if you are interested in that. That is going to be in the description below. You can click on that. You can also find my Facebook page, Jonathan Kegas News 6, and my Twitter account at Jonathan Kegas if you want to reach out to me, is where that is all going to be in the description. But you see there in that brown and white kind of gray color there, that is the satellite picking up on that dust plume, again, sliding through the Caribbean. It will also help to enhance sunrises and sunsets. Now, the motion of this dust is going to go over Cuba. You see it there as we get into the early part of this work week, Tuesday, Wednesday, through the resorts in Mexico, through the Yucatan, and then kind of pinwheel up through the Gulf of Mexico. So I think Florida misses out on the highest concentration of dust this time around, but you see where it works its way through. That's going to be mainly toward Texas, Louisiana, and then even up the Mississippi River Valley. So places like Memphis, Tennessee, getting into St. Louis, into Missouri, into Arkansas, could see some enhanced sunrise and sunsets as a result of that yearly occurring phenomenon. We've already had one little dust outbreak hit the United States earlier last month, really, an early season outbreak. Here's a closer look at the Caribbean satellite and then the Eastern Pacific satellite, that big flare-up of thunderstorms on the Pacific side. That is going to move away from the Atlantic basin, so we're not concerned with that. But there is a broader area of disturbed weather down through Central America that we are going to be focused on, I think, really as we get towards Father's Day weekend, for a very low potential anyway of something to develop. We are starting to see some of the computer forecasts, the longer range, give a slight signal. What we're looking at here are the European ensembles. So it's the ensembles, the European model with a bunch of different initial conditions in there. and it goes into trying to determine if something is going to develop, and then if it does develop, where it moves. So notice all these L's out in the Pacific. Those are our thunderstorms that we just took a look at. So that's the model there, or the ensemble, picking up on that. Down further into Central America, we saw the other blossoming of thunderstorms. So there is a very slight potential over the next few days that something does get outlooked by the Hurricane Center. Really wouldn't have time to amount to much, though, as it would quickly move into the mountainous terrain of Central America. Now, regardless, if it develops, there's going to be a lot of heavy rain into Central America. I want to focus on really later in the period. I'm going to do a lot of clicking here just to speed up. And this is getting into Father's Day weekend. And again, not really expecting any development to work its way into most of the Caribbean or Gulf of Mexico over the next 5 or so days. But really, as we start to work our way towards Father's Day weekend, there we go, the 17th into the 18th, you see those L's start to increase a little bit. So that's the ensembles kind of hinting at something trying to develop there as we get into the end of next week. And again, a low chance. There's a lot of land interaction, so it'd be tough for it to get going, but certainly something out there that we would watch. And that is, climatologically speaking, one of the areas to watch. I want to show you the European model itself. This is the spin, the vorticity, as it's technically called, scientifically called, but it's the spin in the low levels of our atmosphere. And watch what happens. We're looking in this type of model for the red color there. That means we're looking at a higher amount of spin, if you will, but also a consolidated area. And you see a couple of those try to work their way into the basin. There's really not a ton out there, but you see a few little areas trying to work through the Yucatan, the extreme Western Caribbean. So again, just a little hint that something might try to get going, a little something, if you will, towards the end of the 7 to 8 day stretch. That would put us into Father's Day weekend and beyond. And again, if something were to develop, it is likely going to stay in that region. Here is why. We're looking at the mean sea level pressure now. We're going to have a big area of high pressure, a subtropical ridge, really stay locked in toward the Bahamas, extending itself into Florida, parts of the eastern Gulf of Mexico. That is that green color. The darker the green, the higher the pressure. And basically here, that is going to help to suppress anything that gets going. So anything in that rust color, that red, that is, relatively speaking, an area of lower pressure. And as you see things try to consolidate, you saw that little flare up over the Yucatan as that kind of went on through. Note this green color. I'm going to look towards my other computer here and kind of highlight that. Anything that would try to develop in the extreme southwest or western Caribbean, even western Gulf of Mexico, Bay of Campeche, will likely be forced there unless we have a significant breakdown of that high pressure. So again, over the next week to 10 days, really don't foresee anything impacting the United States. But there could be something, again, getting going down in that part of the world that would impact Central America or Mexico. What we are looking at now is the upper level divergence map here. This is on Tropical Tidbits, good site for everything there. But we're looking at this because if you were watching or paying attention to social media in the middle of May, a lot of commotion about a huge hurricane sliding up the Gulf of Mexico. The GFS model did that. And for any of you guys that are familiar with the GFS, the American model, that time of the year, it is extremely biased to pop off a strong tropical system and put it in the Gulf. Of course, that never happened, and it wasn't expected to unless you believe some of the hype that's out there. But you always look to see why a model is doing something. Models are just guidance. They aren't gospel. And as we take a look at this upper level divergence chart here, you see that big blob of green, and that would point towards the Eastern Pacific being the bullseye for upper level divergence. When things diverge aloft, they converge at the surface. And when you get that surface convergence, you get thunderstorms to develop, and they will have the potential to develop into something tropical. Most of that is centered over Mexico and the Eastern Pacific, and we are expecting at least one named system to come out of that in the Eastern Pacific. But there's also a little bit in the Western Gulf of Mexico. So that's something that we're going to watch again towards the back half, towards next week and into the third week of June, for some possible development. Again, there's really nothing to write home about in that part of the world, regardless of what happens or what develops. There's going to be a lot of land interaction. And again, it's just a very low chance at that point. But again, we have some meteorological confidence that there's at least going to be a blossom of thunderstorms in the west Gulf of Mexico as we get towards Father's Day weekend. So we're going to be watching that. But in the short term, there are no threats to the United States, no big threat anyway out there in the main development region, as we would expect this time of the year. Nice and quiet. We just have a lot of dust moving through the Atlantic region, which again, more often than not, helps to at least suppress a little bit thunderstorm chances. And if you don't have thunderstorms, you can't get tropical systems. It all starts from the cluster of thunderstorms and then develops from there. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Tropics Watch. Again, we do this every Sunday and as needed. So if something comes up there, look for this channel again, and we're going to pinpoint what is out there and determine where it's going. We always root for fish storms, of course, so we can watch these things from afar and do their thing without impacting land. And that's what we are rooting for. Again, another active season is forecast, as you've likely heard by now, by multiple agencies and by multiple private sector companies and academia, colleges that put these forecasts out as well. So we're just rooting for the fish storms all day, every day. Thank you again, guys, for tuning in. Again, this is Tropics Watch coming at you from Orlando, Florida in News 6. And again, we will catch you on Sunday and hopefully only once a week, because that means that we are keeping things nice and quiet. Thanks for tuning in. You can hit me up on Facebook, Jonathan Kegas News 6, or at Jonathan Kegas. We have a couple of links there for you in the description if you would like more on that Saharan dust that is just hanging out in the Atlantic. Thanks, guys.